Can I complete the All-Canadian Rebuild Challenge here in NHL 24, which basically means I have 3 years with every Canadian team to win them a Stanley Cup, rebuild them. I have 3 years to rebuild every single Canadian team and win them a Stanley Cup here in the game. We will go all across Canada in honor of the Edmonton Oilers making the Stanley Cup Finals, and hopefully I can at least win a few Stanley Cups with different franchises here in NHL 24. We will be starting off with the mecca of hockey in Canada, which is Toronto. Also have not won a Stanley Cup in over 50 seasons. 1967. I have 3 years to change that. Let's see if I can do it. So starting off here in Toronto, already we know they have a pretty good, well-built team. Their first line consists of Nylander, Matthews, and Marner, +5. They also have Bertuzzi, John Tavares, and Max Domi. Matthew Nyes is there alongside Kampf and Yarncroc. And if we take a look at their defense, a lot is left to be desired. Honestly, Morgan Riley is our best defender at an 88. Everybody else isn't very great. And in goal, we are rocking with Samsonov and an 83 Joseph Wall. So first off, because the clock is ticking, I only have 3 years to win a Stanley Cup with Toronto, which honestly should be one of the easier teams to win a cup. Some of these Canadian teams are literally going through a rebuild. I'm going to have to go ahead, make some trades, and see how I can improve this roster. So the first trade that I will be making, we are going to get rid of John Tavares' $10 million contract. Also Samsonov, a first and 2 seconds for UC Saros and Ryan McDonough. Technically, McDonough has been traded to Tampa, but here in the game, that trade did not go through, so he's still on Nashville. Let's see if the Preds will accept. And they've actually rejected our offer, so we might have to slot in another first-round pick. Instead, I threw in Fraser Minton to see if they wanted him more than a first-round pick, and luckily they did. We got the trade to go through, and now UC Saros and Ryan McDonough are members of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Next up, another trade with Nashville, getting back Ryan O'Reilly, who was on the team last year for a first, a second, and Calle Yarncroc. And Nashville has no problem dealing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Next up, I'm going after Travis Hamonic, who does have 2 years left on his deal at only $1.1 million. He is better than Labushkin for a third, fourth, and a fifth. And we got that trade to go through as well. I think I'm done with the trades for at least year number 1. We'll head into our lineup and see what we're working with now. Our forward core now consists of still a great first line. We got a +5 there. Ryan O'Reilly as our second line center alongside Bertuzzi and Domi. We also have Kampf, Sherwood, and Nyes on that third line. I actually kind of want to move Nyes up to the second line. Have Domi, Kampf, and Sherwood. And then our fourth line isn't great now. Defensively, we did get better with Ryan McDonough, 86 overall. We still have Liljegren there with Hamonic, McCabe, Edmonston, and Brody. And of course, we also have a massive upgrade in goal with UC Saros, who is a 91 overall, 28 years of age, only making $5 million. Also, we do have to name a new captain for the Toronto Maple Leafs, so it will be Morgan Riley. He's been here the longest. He's been through a lot of struggles here in Toronto, so hopefully he can be the captain that leads them back to a Stanley Cup for the first time since 1967. Now, I did forget to mention, if we do win a Stanley Cup, say in year number 1 with Toronto, we will move then to the next Canadian team. We will not complete the entire 3 years. But of course, we do have 3 years to work with. If we do fail and then fail again, we have one final shot. But I mean, 22, 10, and 4 to start the season, not a bad record. We were like, what, 13 and 4, I believe, at one point. Now, at the end of the season, we would end up finishing second in the Atlantic, going 51, 27, and 4, 106 points, only behind the Buffalo Sabres of all teams. Again, they simulate absolutely nutty in this game. The Rangers were the best team in the entire NHL with 112 points. Matthews is going to lead our team in scoring, 62 goals and 112 points, a monster season. Nylander had 98, Marner 84, Bertuzzi had 67. Also 31 goals. Ryan O'Reilly was good. Morgan Riley was okay. Domi was a -11, so that's not great. And UC Saros 44, 21, and 4. 3 shutouts and only a .906 save percentage. David Pastrnak is going to lead the NHL in not only goals with 65, but points with 118. Absolutely monster year for Pasta, as we are going to play in the very first round the Boston Bruins, the team that absolutely owns us in the playoffs. I'm going to predict a Game 7 defeat yet again. Luckily, we did get rid of Boston in Game 6. There was no shot of us winning a Game 7, and now we have the Columbus Blue Jackets in round number 2. We absolutely dominated Columbus in 5 games, and now we have the New York Rangers in the conference final. Toronto making it there for the first time in probably over 20 years at this point. Believe it or not, Toronto actually has made the Stanley Cup Finals and All-Canadian Cup Finals as well, as we are going to be playing the Vancouver Canucks. Who's going to bring the cup back to Canada, and can we get the job done here with Toronto? My very first season as the general manager? Well, we would end up getting swept in the Stanley Cup Finals in typical Toronto Maple fraud fashion. I mean, Vancouver was just clearly the better team than us. If we check postseason stats, Matthew Knies is going to lead our team. 10 goals, 21 points. Matthews had 20, did have 9 goals. Bertuzzi 20. Mitch Marner was all right, I guess. Nylander wasn't great. Ryan O'Reilly was okay. Connor McDavid is going to win the Ted Lindsay and Hart Trophy. Art Ross and Maurice Richard to pass to the Norris to Cale Makar. Conn Smythe will go to Elias Pettersson. Georgiev the Vezina and the Selke to Crosby. Now in the re-sign phase, we do got to re-sign Bertuzzi and I believe Max Domi as well as Liljegren, but I can qualify him. He's up to an 85 at 25 years old. We do have 13.8 mil to get back whoever we want to, and we should have no problem signing the guys that we want to sign. Now that we got everybody re-signed, we head into free agency with only 1.2 mil to spend, so I'm not going to be going after anybody, but I might make a trade. I don't know. I'll look at the market, see who's available. So here in the offseason, we are going after Pavel Mintyukov and Vladimir Tarasenko for Morgan Rielly, a first, second, and a third round pick. And that was an easy trade to make. We bolstered our decor, who, I mean, Mintyukov already is the same overall as Rielly. He's going to grow. He's on a low contract. That gives us more cap room to work with. Now, I came across Winnipeg. They actually want to give up Rutger McGroarty, who's a 78 overall, signed for 4 years on a cheap-ass deal. So I'm going to give up 2 seconds, a third, and another third. And the Winnipeg Jets accepted my offer. I absolutely fleeced them on that. Now, heading into our second season, we still have the same exact first line. Second line is pretty much the same outside of adding an 87 overall Vladimir Tarasenko there. Knies, Domi, and McGroarty on the third line. And we take a look at our decor, McDonough and Hamonic. We also have McCabe and Nemela, then TJ Brody and Joel Edmonston, and of course in goal, UC Saros, who was actually dropped down to a 90 overall now, and Joseph Wall is an 84. We also have Hildeby in the AHL, who is an 81 overall goalie. Now, process of elimination, Austin Matthews is the new captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, now that Morgan Rielly's gone. Now, I don't even know how we made the postseason. We started out 5-11, but we barely snuck in, going 42, 34, and 6, 90 points on the year. Boston was the best team in our division and for the entire NHL. William Nylander is going to lead our team in scoring. Actually, him and Marner were tied at 93 points apiece. Matthews had a down season, 49 goals, 87 points. Tarasenko had 56. Well, he was a minus 15. Bertuzzi minus. Domi minus. Matthew Knies was a minus 20. And for Saros, I mean, he cracked a 9-11 save percentage. Better stats than last season. 4 shutouts and 35 wins. Jason Robertson will have the most points in the NHL at 110. And for goals, it's actually going to go to Cole Caulfield with 57 on the season, as Toronto is going to face the New Jersey Devils in the first round. Of course, New Jersey would dominate us in 5 games in the first round, as the Dallas Stars sweep the Devils in the Stanley Cup Finals. Quinn Hughes will actually take home the Ted Lindsay, the Hart Trophy, and the Norris, as the Art Ross will go to Robo and Cole Caulfield to Maurice Richard. Now for the Conn Smythe, Robo will take that home. Schmidt will win the Vezina, and the Selke will go to Alexander Barkov. Now, interesting enough, we got to re-sign Mitch Marner to a massive contract, I bet. Well, we do have almost $30 million in cap space. We got to get back Tarasenko, Robertson, and Amelia, as well as Timothy Liljegren. And also, UC Saros is a UFA. Joseph Wall and Hildeby are both RFAs, so we can qualify one of these or either both of these guys. So I'm going to try to make an absolute splash here in the offseason. Marner, 3 firsts and a second for Lindell and Miro Heiskanen. And the Dallas Stars have accepted my offer. We just traded a massive piece, as we are going all in the final season for Toronto. Now in the final season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, we have Tarasenko, Matthews, and Nylander, Bertuzzi, Ryan O'Reilly, who's now down to an 82 overall with Rutger McGroarty. Our third line honestly isn't great. Maybe I can throw Max Domi up there in the second line. Instead of having Ryan O'Reilly, he can be the third line center. Now defensively, we are much better. Heiskanen and Lindell maybe as our first line pair, 91 and 86. Then we have Amelia, Edmonston, Mintyukov, who's a 90, alongside Ryan McDonough. And then in goal, UC Saros back up to a 91 overall, and Joseph Wall is an 84. Now at the end of year number 3, we will finish with a record of 45, 29, and 8, 98 points. Tampa Bay was the best in our division, winning 55 games, and Vancouver for the entire NHL winning 53. Tampa Bay, I mean, only had 1 overtime loss. It's low-key kind of wild. Austin Matthews will have a monster year, 59 goals, 114 points. Nylander had 30 goals, 98 points. Tarasenko 64, Heiskanen 61, Bertuzzi 56, and Domi 54. And if we take a look at UC Saros, 40, 25, and 7, 6 shutouts, and a .915 save percentage. He is definitely on one headed into the postseason. Hopefully we can't have one last run where he plays great. Matthews will lead the entire league in goals. He's actually going to tie in goals with Kirill Kaprizov at 59, but lead in points with 114. As we got probably the toughest first round matchup in the New York Rangers. I mean, they simulate great in this game, and they're loaded top to bottom. Luckily, we would beat the Rangers in 6 games, and now we have the Carolina Hurricanes in round number 2. We would beat Carolina in 5 games, and now in the conference finals, we are facing the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, for the second time in 3 years, Toronto is back in the Stanley Cup Finals, yet again playing the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, we got swept the first time around. Hopefully, things can be different here in year number 3 of the Toronto rebuild. And the Toronto Maple Leafs will get the revenge over the Vancouver Canucks after defeating them in, I believe, 5 games in the Stanley Cup Finals to finally go on for the first time since 1967 and win the goddamn Stanley Cup in the 3rd year of the video as well. That was our one final shot at a Stanley Cup, and luckily we got it done. I mean, we did make the finals in year number 1. Year 2 was a little rocky, but year number 3, we rebounded very well, and now we get to take home the Stanley Cup, as Austin Matthews will put up 21 goals and 41 points in the postseason as the captain of Toronto to take home the Conn Smythe Trophy, as the Stanley Cup will be raised by the Toronto Maple Leafs for basically everybody's first time here watching this video. I doubt there's anybody alive in 1967 that witnessed Toronto win their last Stanley Cup. We'll be able to watch this video on YouTube, but regardless, there is Matthews lifting it for the first time in his career, as the Toronto Maple Leafs are back at it at being Stanley Cup champions. In the postseason, I mean, Matthews was great. 21 goals, 41 points. Nylander had 33, Bertuzzi 23, as well as Tarasenko, who was massive. Heiskanen was solid, as well as Max Domi. Austin Matthews will take home the Ted Lindsay, Maurice Richard, Art Ross, and Hart Trophy. Quinn Hughes, the Norris, the Conn Smythe, also to Matthews. UC Saros is actually going to win the Vezina, and Elias Pettersson will take home the Selke. Now, the next Canadian team that we will be rebuilding is the Montreal Canadiens. Now, obviously, this is going to be a bit more challenging considering the fact that they are currently going through a rebuild, and Toronto, I mean, they're at least trying to compete for titles, but right now in the first line, we got Doc, Suzuki, and Caulfield, actually a +5. We also have Brendan Gallagher with Dvorak and Slavkovsky, who can grow in 3 years, probably to like mid-80s. We got Pearson, Newhook, and Anderson, and then our fourth line isn't great defensively. I would like to pick up a number 1 D-man. Michael Matheson, 86 overall, is our best defenseman. And in goal, no longer Carey Price. We got Samuel Montembeault at an 80 overall. So a number 1 D-man, a starting goalie, and maybe a centerman, a second-line centerman would probably be the immediate moves that I want to make here in Montreal. Now, the first trade I will be making is for Charlie McAvoy, who is one of the better defensemen in the NHL, but in this universe, his trade value, honestly, is pretty low. We will be giving up Newhook, a first and a second-round pick, and Boston rejected our offer, so we're probably going to have to sweeten it just a little bit. I added in 2 third-round picks that they wanted, and luckily they did accept my trade offer, so Charlie McAvoy now is the number 1 D-man that I wanted. Again, another trade with Boston for Jeremy Swayman, who we will have to re-sign, but I mean, he can grow to like a 90 overall for Fowler, a first, second, and a third-round pick, and we have just basically fleeced from the Boston Bruins, bolstered our D-core, and bolstered our starting goalie. Next up, I'm going out and getting a legit number 1 centerman in Tage Thompson. Obviously, Slavkovsky, if I was going longer than 3 years, I would keep him, but he's not going to be a high overall within 3 seasons. Threw in a first, second, another second, and David Reinbacher, who's also only a 74 overall. And the Buffalo Sabres had no hesitance to accept my offer, as we have completely changed this Montreal Canadiens team. Now our forward core looks like this. Thompson down the middle with a 90. We got Suzuki on the second line, still Caulfield, and Doc with Thompson will be a +4. Our second line has a +2. Now defensively, we got a lot better. Matheson and McAvoy fit very well. We also have Savard and Gouli, and then in the net, 87 overall, Jeremy Swayman. Does need to be re-signed, but he's only 24 years old, so he should grow to like an 89, 90. And in one season, Montreal is back to being the best team in the Atlantic Division, 49, 25, and 8. Only 3 trades it took us to build a Stanley Cup contender here in Montreal. Now, for the entire NHL, if we take a look, Colorado was the best team, winning 56 games. Tage Thompson will have a career year, 52 goals, 113 points. Caulfield at 86, Kirby Dach, 66, Suzuki at 65, McAvoy was pretty good, Josh Anderson, 46, and for our goalie, Swayman, 38, 22, and 4. Only a .909 save percentage and 3 shutouts, but I mean, we won, what, 45 games? Tage Thompson will lead the league in scoring with 113 points. Matthews had 107, as well as Nathan McKinnon. And for the goal side, Matthews will lead with 68 on the year. Also, Tage Thompson was right behind him with 52. Now, in the first round of the playoffs, we have the classic rivalry of Montreal and Boston. Round number 1 should be a very good series. We would dominate Boston in 5 games in the first round, and now we take on the Florida Panthers. We somehow beat Florida in 7 games, and now in the conference finals, we have to face the Washington Capitals of all teams. I mean, they don't really have a great roster. They should not even be here. And in the very first season, Montreal has made the Stanley Cup Finals up against the Nashville Predators. First time being here since 2021, of course. Now, can the Montreal Canadiens go on and take home the Stanley Cup in only the first season, rebuilding them here in NHL 24? And the Montreal Canadiens are going to get it done as we sweep the Nashville Predators in the Stanley Cup Finals 4-0. It was not even close, and now in the very first season, we are going to go on, capture the Stanley Cup, and not have to rebuild Montreal anymore. I made 3 trades, adding Tage Thompson, McAvoy, and Jeremy Swayman. And literally in the very first season, we got the job done. So shout out to Montreal for taking home the Stanley Cup at the end of year number 1. And now we move on to a brand new Canadian team. Now in the postseason, Tage Thompson was our best player, 12 goals, 29 points. McAvoy had 21, Anderson 19, Caulfield 18, and Brendan Gallagher 17. And for Jeremy Swayman, he rocked a .927 save percentage, also 2 shutouts in the postseason. Thompson will win the Ted Lindsay, Art Ross, and Hart Trophy. The Maurice Richard will go to Austin Matthews. The Norris to Cale Makar. Obviously, Thompson, also the Conn Smythe. UC Saros, the Vezina. And the Selke Trophy will go to Ryan O'Reilly. Now, the next Canadian team we are moving to is the nation's capital of Ottawa, who really have been suffering since 2017. I don't believe they made the playoffs since then. This is what their forward core looks like. Obviously, their captain, Brady Tkachuk. Also, Tim Stützle is very good alongside Batherson. We got Giroux there with Norris and Kubalik. Our third and fourth lines aren't great. Now, defensively, we do have Thomas Chabot and Jacob Chychrun, who can help us out defensively. Nick Sanderson should be very good also. And in goal, we don't really have a goalie. I mean, Anton Forsberg only an 83 overall. I think that's the one weakness of Ottawa that we have to shore up. And the first trade that I'll probably make is for a goalie. So I'm going to be going after Logan Thompson from the Vegas Golden Knights. Luckily for them, they still will have Aiden Hill for Sogard, a second, fourth, and another 4th round pick. And Vegas is totally unwilling, so I might have to slot in a first. Maybe a 2029 first-round pick will make this deal go through, and it did. And now we got our starting goalie in Logan Thompson, who we know is a pretty good goaltender, 86 overall in this game. Next up, I'm going after Matt Nieto and Lars Eller, some depth scoring for us, as, I mean, our 3rd and 4th lines are not great for 2 prospects, a 4th and a 5th-round pick. And Pittsburgh luckily did accept my deal. So now after making those deals, we should be able to at least make the postseason here in the simulation. I'm going to simulate a long sim the first season. And hopefully we do have some playoff hockey here in Ottawa. Now, at the end of year number 1, we will make the playoffs, going 43, 35, and 4, 90 points on the season. Boston was the best team in our division, and for the entire NHL, it was the Colorado Avalanche, winning 57 games. But I mean, everybody already expected that. Colorado has a great team in this game. Brady Tkachuk going to lead our team in goals with 39 and points with 80. Drake Batherson at 79, Kubalik 77. Tim Stützle actually had a very bad year, only 25 goals and 74 points. Claude Giroux had 67, Norris 62, Chabot 48, and for our goalie, Thompson 35, 26, and 4, 2 shutouts. And I mean, he's allowing 3 goals against per game and a .903 save percentage. Nikita Kucherov will lead everybody in scoring with 106 points, and for goals, it will go to Austin Matthews, who did have 65. And in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, we are going to be playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay would dominate us in 5 games as the Boston Bruins go all the way, beating Dallas in 6 games in the Stanley Cup Finals. Mikko Rantanen will win the Ted Lindsay and Hart Trophy, the Art Ross to Kucherov, Maurice Richard to Matthews, Norris to Cale Makar, as Pasta will win the Conn Smythe, Linus Ullmark the Vezina, and the Selke will go to Sidney Crosby. Alright, so here we are in the offseason. I gotta make a move. Claude Giroux, a first, second, another first, and Lars Eller to make the money work. For Patrick Laine, he can slot in very nicely on that first line. Alright, so the new trade now is a first, second, and a first. Thomas Chabot, who really doesn't simulate that well, makes the same amount of money as Patrick Laine, a little less. Also slot in Lars Eller for Bruce Jenner and Laine. Let's see if Columbus will be going through with it, and they have. as we have now replaced Thomas Chabot. Not replaced him, but we got a guy in line A who we know can score like 50 goals. And we also got a centerman that we desperately needed for the second or third line. So headed into our second season, we are now rocking with Tkachuk, Stützle, and Line A on the first line. We get a +5 there. Also Batherson, Norris, and Giroux. We also have Shane Pinto, who's an RFA, who probably will end up qualifying or will sign some way through the season here. We do have Joseph, Bruce Jenner, and Kubalik on that third line. Our fourth line isn't great. Now, defensively, we did have to move, I believe it was Thomas Chabot, but luckily we got Sanderson and Hamonic, Brandstrom, Chychrun, Zub, and Bernard Docker, and then in goal, we got Logan Thompson, who's an 87 overall, a pretty good roster built in Ottawa. Now, let's see if we can have any playoff success whatsoever. All right, so here we are at the deadline, not performing too great, 29, 30, and 5. We're going to give up Thompson, Giroux, a second, third, and a first for Lysell and Jeremy Swayman, because Swayman is on the block. And the Boston Bruins had no problem making that offer, as we got rid of Thompson, who we did need to re-sign. We needed to re-sign Giroux as well. Thompson, I mean, hasn't really worked out here in Ottawa. Now, predictably, at the end of the season, we did not make the playoffs. So we were actually the worst team in the Atlantic Division, going 33, 43, and 6, only 72 points. So we were not even remotely close to a playoff spot. Brady Tkachuk is going to lead our team, 28 goals and 67 points. So our offense was not all that in a bag of chips. Tim Stützle had only 64, Line A 63, only 26 goals. I thought he would be better on that first line. Drake Batherson 52, but was a -15. Jenner is bad. Kubalik, everybody else pretty much was bad. And Swayman, I mean, he went 8-20. 903 save percentage, 32 games on the season. How many did he play for Ottawa? He only played 15 games, going 2-12. Holy shit, that is a horrible record. 3.5 goals against per game and only a 902 save percentage. Nikita Kucherov is going to lead the entire NHL in goals with 54. Him and Kaprizov would tie, but he would lead in points with 113. And the New Jersey Devils would go on and sweep the Dallas Stars, taking home their first Stanley Cup since Martin Brodeur. Nikita Kucherov will win all major individual awards. The Norris will go to Quinn Hughes, the Conn Smythe to Jack Hughes, the Vezina to Igor Shesterkin, and the Selke will go to Sid the Kid Crosby, as we now are heading into the final season with the Ottawa Senators. So far, not so good. I don't know what else I could really do to improve this team too much. If we don't simulate well, then we don't. I mean, our forward core isn't bad. Our D core is a little shaky. It's not bad, though. We get Sanderson and Chychrun, who are very high overalls. And now we picked up Swayman, so hopefully maybe a trade or two in the offseason. In the re-sign phase, we almost have up to $18 million. We do got to get back Jacob Chychrun, who's an 87 overall. Shane Pinto as well. He's an RFA. Brandstrom's an RFA, so I do want to sign these guys and get these guys back. For goalie, Swayman is signed. Forsberg, I'll probably let go. Swayman's actually down to an 89 now, so after that rough season, he lowered it overall. So in free agency, we went out and got Jake McCabe on a pretty good contract. And for our defenseman and Jacob Chychrun, he also was very happy to accept our offer. We had to get him back in free agency, but he was really the only great defenseman out there to get. Free agency this season wasn't that great in my opinion. All right, now in our final season with the Ottawa Senators, we still have the same exact first line, 88, 90, and 90. We also threw up Lysell on the second line alongside Pinto and Batherson. On the third line, we got Norris, Jenner, and Kubalik. And then defensively, Sanderson and Chychrun is our top D pair. We also have Zub and Hamonic, and then our bottom pair isn't great, but I mean, Jake McCabe can definitely help us out at least a little bit. And then we have a 90 overall, Jeremy Swayman, back up to a 90. So hopefully he has a very big season with us. Now, unfortunately, yet again, we were the worst team in the Atlantic Division. 36, 42, and 4, 76 points. I guess now I know firsthand what is wrong with the Ottawa Senators. They are just not a good team whatsoever. You need a complete overhaul to make this a Stanley Cup contending roster. And obviously, I do not have time for that in 3 seasons. Timmy Stu, I guess, had an okay year. 24 goals, 81 points, was a -28. Tkachuk had 65, Lysell 56, 31 goals, which is kind of impressive. Patrick Laine did not simulate well on this Ottawa Senators team. And for Jeremy Swayman, I mean, an 899 save percentage. He was not good at all either. As Artemi Panarin is going to lead the entire league in scoring with 107 points. And for goals, it will go to Austin Matthews, who had 62 on the season. As the Edmonton Oilers will go on and beat the New Jersey Devils in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Breadman is going to take home the Ted Lindsay, Art Ross and Hart Trophy. The Maurice Richard will go to Matthews. Quinn Hughes is going to win the Norris. The Conn Smythe will go to Leon Draisaitl. Igor the Vezina yet again. And the Selke will go to Crosby for the 3rd season in a row. Now we are moving on to the Winnipeg Jets, who of course had a very embarrassing defeat in the first round of the postseason to Colorado this year. Got dominated in 5 games after winning game number 1, just like last season in Vegas. Honestly, in the game here, they sim pretty well. Their first line's electric. Toffoli, Monahan, and Velarde's not a bad second line. Third line, we got some depth, and their fourth line isn't terrible. Cole Perfetti does grow to a pretty high overall. And now if we take a look defensively, we got Morrissey, who is our big gun, 89 overall. Pionks an 85. D'Amelio's there. Schmidt's okay. Dillon and Miller are not great, but they're not terrible either. They're like an 83 overall. We do have a -1 on that 6-pair, top 6. And then we have a 93 overall Connor Hellebuyck in the net. So, I mean, I can't really complain. We have a good built roster here. I may make some few tweaks here and there to fix it and make it a little bit better in order for us to simulate better. And then we can honestly be a Stanley Cup contender for all 3 years. It's not like Ottawa, where, I mean, they're going through a rebuild. Winnipeg is competing right now. So the first trade I'm going to be making, I'm going after Bowen Byram, a guy who I can pair up alongside Josh Morrissey. He's got 2 years left on his deal as well. For a prospect, Dillon, a first and a second. This might not go through, so I might have to add in another draft prospect. Now, the first trade I'm going after, Bowen Byram from the Buffalo Sabres, signed for 2 years for a prospect, Dillon, a first and a second. Let's see. And the trade has been rejected. I probably assumed that I was going to have to sweeten the deal a little bit. I'll add in another first-round pick from 2029. Let's see. Buffalo, are you going to accept? Still rejected. I don't really think that's possible. Actually, screw it. I'll try throwing in another first-round pick. Let's see if they'll do this. First-round pick from 2029. And the trade has been accepted by the Buffalo Sabres. Welcome, Bowen Byram. A good addition to our decor. And now Bowen Byram will fit in perfectly alongside Josh Morrissey, an 89 and 85 overall D-man. Both pretty young. I mean, Morrissey's in his prime at 28, but Bowen Byram's only 22 years old. Also, I'm going to be stripping Adam Lowry of the captaincy, giving it to Mark Scheifele because of that hit he had on Jake Evans in the postseason. That is what we need our captain to be, a hard player to play against. And he's the next captain of the Winnipeg Jets. Also, Adam Lowry will probably be gone by next season anyway. So now at the end of the first season as the GM of Winnipeg, we would go on be the third best team in the Central, 45, 32, and 5, 95 points. Somehow Chicago won 47 games. That's absolutely crazy. Florida Panthers were the best team in the entire NHL, winning 55. Mark Scheifele will lead our team, 85 points. Nikolai Ehlers had 76. Kyle Connor only 63, but did have 36 goals. Toffoli at 59, was a -4 though. Morrissey was okay. Cole Perfetti had a good rookie season, 19 goals, 45 points. And if we take a look at Connor Hellebuyck, 38, 26, and 3. Only 3 shutouts, but he did have a .913 save percentage, which I'm perfectly okay with. Especially for a 93 overall goalie, he should be simulating pretty well in this game. Austin Matthews will lead the entire NHL in goals with 64 and points with 119. As we are going to be playing the Colorado Avalanche yet again in round number 1. We know what they did to us in real life, so we got to get our payback, get our revenge. And now it's time for us to dominate them. Luckily, we did beat them in 7 games, and now we move on to play the Chicago Blackhawks. How on earth did Chicago win 47 games led by a rookie Connor Bedard, and now they're in the second round of the postseason? I am literally shocked. We dealt with the Blackhawks in 6 games, and now in the conference finals, we face the Calgary Flames, a Canadian team who also does not have a greatly built roster, but somehow they got here. And the Winnipeg Jets have made the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time, maybe in franchise history. I'm not too certain on if Winnipeg has or has not made the Stanley Cup Finals. Regardless, we have to play the Florida Panthers, who we know obviously have a very good roster. So let's see if we can go on and get the job done here in year number 1. And the Winnipeg Jets have done it in year number 1. GM Pasta literally only had to make 1 trade, and that was for Bowen Byram, and we have gone all the way, beating Florida in 5 games in the finals, pretty much dominating them, as the Winnipeg Jets will take home their very first Stanley Cup in franchise history, as they have got the job done here. And we move on from Winnipeg really quickly. We didn't even need 3 years. All we needed was 1, as Nikolai Ehlers will take home the Conn Smythe, 9 goals and 25 points for him. So a very good postseason run, as the Winnipeg Jets, man, all the way in season number 1. And there it is, boys, the Stanley Cup waiting to be presented to our newly named captain in Mark Scheifele, as he has led the Winnipeg Jets all the way here in season number 1. And now we move on to the next Canadian team, as we try to win them also a Stanley Cup. Now in the postseason, obviously Ehlers was the Conn Smythe winner. He had a great playoff run, 9 goals, 25 points. Scheifele was very good, 8 goals, 23 points. Velarde had 20, Kyle Connor 18, Perfetti 18, and Monahan 13. And for Connor Hellebuyck, a .918 save percentage. There we go. 16-9, 2 shutouts. Matthews again is going to take home all the awards. The Norris will go to Quinn Hughes. Obviously, the Conn Smythe to Oilers. Sergei Bobrovsky is going to win the Vezina, and the Selke will go to Ryan O'Reilly. Now, the next Canadian team that we are moving to is the Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, lost in the second round to the Edmonton Oilers in Game 7, and this roster really is pretty good. I mean, Lindholm is a UFA, I believe, at the end of the season, but they are very well built defensively. Obviously, Quinn Hughes, our best defenseman in top 5 defensemen in the entire league. We also have Hronek there with Zadorov, and if we take a look at goalies, Demko's a 90, so we should be able to win at least 1 Stanley Cup in 3 years. I don't even know what moves I'd want to make. Maybe some depth forwards for a 3rd and 4th line, or maybe another defenseman to pair alongside Quinn Hughes, considering he's far and away our best teammate, and Hronek could walk, although I think he's a UF or an RFA at the end of the season. 4.4 mil signed for 1 year. Now, because of my other trades falling through, I'm going after Charlie McAvoy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We traded for him, I believe, on Montreal, and we did win a Stanley Cup. 7 years on his deal. He's got very low trade value for some reason for a prospect. Garland, 1st, 3rd, and Mikheyev. Now, let's see, will this go through? Trade has been rejected. Totally unwilling. We will throw in a 2029 first-round pick, and let's see. Boston accepted our offer. Finally, we upgraded our D. We got a very lethal top pair with Hughes and McAvoy now. Next up, I'm going to pick up Stankoven and Wyatt Johnston from the Dallas Stars. 2 guys on low deals who also grow to like mid-80 overall players. For a prospect, Joshua, a 2nd and a 1st-round pick. I think that should be good enough to go through, and luckily Dallas did accept my deal. So we now have a +5 and +4 on our top 6. Our 3rd line's okay. Our 4th line isn't great. Depth really isn't our strong suit. McAvoy and Hughes, we got a +1 there. 93 and 90. Also Hronek, Zadorov, Soucy, and Myers. And then in goal, a 90 overall, Thatcher Demko. This is a Stanley Cup contending roster. Now, surprisingly, Vancouver is going to miss the playoffs by, 1 point to the Anaheim Ducks as we went 39, 12, and 11, 89 points. Not a great season whatsoever, especially after making the moves that I made. Edmonton was the best team in our division, and for the entire NHL, it was the Boston Bruins. Elias Pettersson didn't have a great season, 28 goals, 87 points. JT Miller had 65, Hughes only 63, Besser 57. So offensively, we were not very good. And in goal, Demko, a .908 save percentage and 3 shutouts. Honestly, isn't terrible. He did have 30 wins also, so I'm not going to blame it on Demko. I'll blame it on our offense for not scoring enough goals. Austin Matthews will continue to dominate, leading in goals with 74 and points with 118. The New York Rangers would go on and sweep the Anaheim Ducks of all teams in the Stanley Cup Finals. How on earth did Anaheim make the finals in year number 1? Matthews will take home all the awards. The Norris will go to Adam Fox, the Conn Smythe also to Adam Fox, Jake Ottinger the Vezina, and the Selke to Sidney Crosby. All right, so we got everybody back in the re-sign phase, and now we head into free agency with $14 million in cap space to spend, so we definitely can go after one of the big guns here. Noah Hanifin would be a great guy to go after. He's only 27 years old at an 86 overall. Also, Sam Reinhart asking for $9.8 million, but is a 90. Can go on that first line, of course. We also would pick up Kevin LeBanc in free agency to help out our offensive core. Now, as we head into our second season on the first line, we got Johnston, Pettersson, and Besser. Johnston is up to an 83. We also have JT Miller alongside Lindholm and Kevin LeBanc. Our 3rd line is improved, and our 4th line isn't great, but I mean, they're not going to be playing much anyways. Now, defensively, Hughes up to a 94, McAvoy 91. We also have Myers and Hanifin, and then Ian Cole and Soucy. And in goal, we still have an 89 overall Demko now. He did drop down 1 overall. But I mean, Arthur Sheloff's up to an 84 already at 23 years of age. Now, yet again, for the 2nd season in a row, we are going to miss the playoffs. 38, 37, and 7, 83 points. I have no idea what's going on with the water in Vancouver, but it's not too great. Edmonton, the best team in our division, and for the entire NHL, it was the Toronto Maple Leafs. Pettersson had an okay season, not really though. 26 goals, 79 points, and was a -18. Hughes had 64, Lindholm 62, Miller 55, Brock Besser only 54 and 22 goals. I mean, offensively, it seems like we are really struggling to put up numbers, although we have like a 94 Quinn Hughes, who is an offensive D-man, and Elias Pettersson, who also is a 94 overall. Now, take a look at Demko. I mean, a .908 save percentage is pretty good. 3 shutouts and 34 wins. I literally can't complain. Those are mediocre stats for a goalie in this game, but I've definitely seen goalies simulate way worse than this. so I'm not going to blame it on him. It's definitely on our offense. The Florida Panthers would go on and beat Dallas in 5 games in the Stanley Cup Finals. Matthews will continue to take home all the awards. The Norris will go to Evan Bouchard, the Conn Smythe to Lundell, Linus Ullmark, the Vezina, and the Selke again to Crosby. Now, in the re-sign phase, we did get back Wyatt Johnston, Pius Suter, Philip Hronek is back, Brock Besser as well, so we got everybody that I wanted to get back, and now we head into free agency after a very disappointing season back-to-back. We do have $6.2 million in cap space. We got a couple RFAs that have been qualified, so hopefully they will come back for one more season. And at the end of next year, I mean, this is our final season, so we don't have to worry about next year, but Demko's contract is up. Maybe I move off of him, try to find a better goalie. But I mean, I can't really complain about his play the past 2 seasons. All right, now you probably are wondering why I'm giving up Kevin LeBanc and Brock Besser, also 2 second-round picks for Logan Cooley, because there's an absolute stud of a superstar in free agency that I'm going after. So we got to get rid of that cap space. Let's see. Well, let's go through. Trade rejected. I guess I'm going to have to add in a first-round pick to make this deal work. 2026 first-round pick sounds good. And luckily, Arizona accepted my offer. We offered Leon Draisaitl $14 million, and instead he goes with the goddamn Pittsburgh Penguins. Oh my God, I just literally ridiculed my roster for this guy. You simply not offer me the dollars I feel I'm deserved. I'd love to see. I'm going to see. Pittsburgh would, oh my God, Pittsburgh offered him 14.1 for 6 years. Wow, we probably should have gave him more, huh? That is a monster contract and a monster player we literally just missed out on. All right, so obviously this is our final season with Vancouver. We missed on Draisaitl in the offseason. Wasn't great in free agency, but we still have a pretty good first line, +4 with Lindholm, Pettersson, and Höglander. We picked up Logan Cooley, 85 overall, alongside Johnston, Gord, Stankoven. Now defensively, we are much better. Hanifin, Hronek are great, Burns and McCabe, and then of course Hughes and McAvoy. So defensively, we should not be a problem. And we also have an 89 overall Thatcher Demko with an 85 Arthur Sheilofs. He has grown to a pretty high overall, higher than I expected. And of course, our scoring troubles, I guess you could say, will probably continue as we have trouble putting the puck in the back of the net, although Pettersson's a 95. I truly do not understand. The rest of our forward core isn't great, but now 3 years in a row, Vancouver will miss the playoffs. I have no idea what happened here. 39, 37, and 6, 84 points. We were just not a good simulating team whatsoever. Quinn Hughes will lead our team in scoring. Only 7 goals, but 72 points. Lindholm at 68. Pettersson only 66. Höglander was bad. McAvoy wasn't great either. And for Demko, I mean, 906 isn't great, but he was okay throughout the video. He's not the reason we were bad. It is more so that we literally could not score. And there you have it. Leon Draisaitl going to lead the NHL in scoring, 107 points. If only we could have picked him up. And for goals, it will go to Matthews, who had 53 on the year. And the Minnesota Wild would go on, dominate Toronto in 5 games to take home the Stanley Cup. As we move on to the next Canadian team, which will be the Calgary Flames. In all honesty, this might be the hardest or one of the hardest to rebuild in 3 seasons. They don't have a great roster. Jonathan Huberdeau at an 86 is making like $10 million, $10.5 million for 8 years. So I'm not really expecting to win a Stanley Cup here. I will try my best to upgrade the roster as much as I can. And then I guess I'm just going to have to let the simulation do the talking. Hopefully we have Anderson and Weegar as our top line pair. The rest of our D isn't great. And we do have an 87 overall, Jacob Markstrom. And Dustin Wolf, I know, grows to a high overall, but that'll probably take like 4 years, which we do not have. Now, I'm going to be going after Logan Cooley and Maselli from the Arizona Coyotes, getting rid of Jonathan Huberdeau's awful contract. Also slotted in Coronado, a second and a first-round pick. And Arizona's totally unwilling, so I'm probably going to have to add in another first here just to make sure this deal goes through. I don't want to give them this year's first-round pick. Luckily, I didn't have to. And now we have 2 young guys who do grow very quickly in this game. Next up, I'm going after Lysell from the Boston Bruins. We have a ton of cap space, so I threw a bunch of picks at them and a prospect. And luckily, Boston did accept. Next up is Shane Gostisbehere and JT Compher from the Detroit Red Wings for a first, second, third, and 2 prospects. And we got that deal done as well. So we definitely have upgraded our roster a little bit. We had a ton of cap space to work with. So that is why I'm going after a ton of these guys who are matching the block. Moving along here, we're going after Corey Perry and Evander Kane from the Oilers. Threw in a bunch of picks and some prospects. And that deal also will go through. So we have greatly overhauled the Calgary Flames squad here at NHL 24. Now let's see how well we will simulate. Now this is what our forward core looks like now. Logan Cooley slots in nicely as our second line center. Defensively, we're very good too. Gostisbehere Weegar, also Rasmus Andersson, and we have a pretty good goalie in an 87 overall, Jacob Markstrom. Now, I guess somewhat predictably, we were not very good. 7th in the Pacific, going 36, 39, and 7, 79 points. The Oilers were the best team in our division, and for the entire NHL, it was the Florida Panthers. Kadri is going to lead our team. He had a big season, 35 goals, 80 points. Kuzmenko had 73. Kane had 60, also 27 goals, so that was a good pickup. Gostisbehere only had 53. Cooley was okay, but was a minus 21. And if we take a look at Markstrom, 27, 31, and 6, and an 8.97 save percentage. That is not great, brother. As Barkov is going to lead all players in scoring with 104 points, and for goals, it will go to Austin Matthews, who had 64. And the New York Islanders surprisingly went on and won the Stanley Cup, beating Colorado, actually sweeping them in the finals. As Barkov is going to take home the Ted Lindsay, Art Ross, and Hart Trophy. Matthews, of course, the Maurice Richard. Hughes, the Norris, the Conn Smythe will go to Noah Dobson, Bobrovsky, the Vezina, and the Selke to Sidney Crosby. I love how Quinn Hughes never won the Norris, not even once when I was the GM of Vancouver. So now in free agency, we do have $10 million in cap space to spend, so I want to go out, get a player that can help us maybe make the playoffs next season. A guy like Tarasenko, a sniper, he is asking for 8.4, which is a lot of money, but I mean, we're going to have to pay these guys if we want them to come and live in Calgary. My apologies for anybody who does live in Calgary. It's not a great place to live. Alberta in general is not great, at least in the wintertime. And luckily, we did snag Vladimir Tarasenko on an $8.4 million deal so he can be our number one line center. Or not center, number one line sniper is what I meant to say. As, of course, he can't put up 40 in this sim if you have him on a good line. Now, heading into our second season, we got Kadri, Tarasenko, and Kane on the first line. Kuzmenko, Cooley, and Comfort. And our third line also is pretty good. Fourth line, we got pretty good depth as well. Gostisbehere, Weegar, Anderson, Poirier, and then our bottom pair honestly isn't great. And if we take a look at our goalies, Dustin Wolf's up to an 87, so I will be moving Markstrom and trying to get back a defenseman in the process. So we got Markstrom now getting traded to the Anaheim Ducks for Cam Fowler and Lucas Dostal. We also are giving up Mikael Backlund, who's making a lot of money. Also a 5th and a 6th round pick. You were a bit off with value, so we're probably going to have to give them a 1st round pick. And honestly, I'm not mad at that. 2030 1st round pick. We won't be here anyways. And Anaheim has no problem taking that 1st round pick. Now, despite actually winning 40 games, we were 5 points back of the last playoff spot that actually went to the Anaheim Ducks. We were 40, 37, and 5, 85 points for the entire NHL. The Edmonton Oilers damn near won 60 games. Logan Cooley was our best player, 25 goals, 64 points. Kadri had 62, but he was a minus 30. That's insane. Tarasenko had 61, Dubé 56, Kuzmenko 53, Anderson 46. Not a lot of offense. And Dustin Wolf wasn't very good either. David Pastrnak is going to lead in goals with 60 and points with 111. And the Dallas Stars would end up beating New York in Game 7 to capture their 2nd Stanley Cup in their franchise's history. And in the offseason, we went out and got Mikko Rantanen on a monster $14 million deal. Obviously, things didn't go well with Draisaitl, so I was not making that mistake again. Now, heading into our final season, our first line is well improved. Cooley, Rantanen, and Tarasenko, plus 5 there. Our second line, Peltier, Kadri, and Dubé. Our third line, not bad. And our fourth line, honestly, we got a lot of depth, at least forward-wise. And defensively, one of our D-men are not great. But outside of that, we're very good with Gostisbehere, Weegar, Anderson, and Cam Fowler. And in the net, we have a 90 overall Dustin Wolf with an 84 Dostal backup. So we should be able to at least make the postseason, hopefully. And in our final season with the Flames, we are going to finish 1st in the Pacific, going 46, 28, and 8, 100 points. Now for the entire NHL, it was the Buffalo Sabres winning 50 games. We were top 4. So we were one of the better teams in the league this season. Mikko Rantanen, probably the biggest reason why. 32 goals, 87 points. Tarasenko at 37 goals. Cooley, 66 points. Kadri, 55. Anderson, 50. And for Dustin Wolf, he had 3 shutouts and a 9-11 save percentage. And in the first round of the playoffs, we have the San Jose Sharks, who are a bit of an easier matchup. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs in a while. This is their first time back. We would deal with the Sharks in 6 games, and now we have the Battle of Alberta in round number 2. And unfortunately, we would end up losing in Game 7, 2-1 to the Oilers, as the Devils would go on, sweeping the Ducks in the finals, winning another Stanley Cup in this video. And now, saving the best for last, we have the Edmonton Oilers, the final Canadian team that I'm going to rebuild. 3 years, you know the deal. We are currently in the Stanley Cup finals right now, down 0-2 to the Florida Panthers, but I still believe in our squad. again, you're not in trouble until you lose on home ice. This team's good, obviously, but I can fill in the gaps that it could be called a weakness point for our squad. Obviously, defense, we're pretty good there, honestly, but goalie, I think I might replace Stuart Skinner and grab a better goaltender. Now, 1-for-1, Darnell Nurse for Pavel Mintyukov. Let's see, will this go through? Trade rejected, so I might have to throw in some picks to make this deal work, but I feel like Mintyukov does get up to like a 90, 91 overall in about 2 years, or maybe even 1 year. And there we go. Threw in a first and a second, and we got Mintyukov, who is a downgrade for year number 1. But I mean, by year number 2, he will already be like Darnell Nurse level. He's also significantly making less money. Now, next up on the agenda is grabbing a goalie in Jeremy Swayman for Skinner, a 3rd, 4th, 2nd, and another 2nd round pick. And the Boston Bruins love to give away Swayman, so we picked him up on a pretty good deal. He does need to be re-signed in the offseason, but we should be able to get that done. Next up, I'm going after Braden Shen, who can be our 2nd or even 3rd line center for a 1st, a prospect, and Adam Henrique. And luckily, St. Louis had no problem accepting my deal. We are going to make another deal with the St. Louis Blues for Torrey Krug and Kevin Hayes, for Dylan Holloway, a 1st, and Cody Ceci to make the money work. And GM Pasta is wheeling and dealing, improving the Oilers roster. So now we are rocking with still Draisaitl, McDavid, and Nuge on the first line, Hyman, Shen, and Kane. Then we got McLeod, Hayes, and Connor Brown. Our 4th line isn't honestly that bad. Now defensively, Bouchard and Ekholm, the best pair in the league, alongside Krug and Desharnais. And then we have Pavel Mintyukov, who will grow probably up to like an 85 next season. And then in the net, an 87 overall, Jeremy Swayman, which is an upgrade over Stuart Skinner. Now the Edmonton Oilers are going to have an absolutely great season. 57 wins, 21 losses, 4 in overtime. Best in our division and best in the entire NHL. As Connor McDavid is going to do Connor McDavid things, 47 goals, 155 points. Draisaitl had 106, also a 50-goal season. Nuge had 84, Kane 63. Bouchard at 61, and Hyman 59. And for goalies, Swayman 45, 19, and 2, 6 shutouts, and a .917 save percentage, as McDavid will lead everybody in scoring with 155, and for goals, it will go to Austin Matthews, who had 69, just like he did in real life this season, as we are going to play the Anaheim Ducks in the very first round. As expected, we dominated them in 5 games, and now we have the Vegas Golden Knights in the second round. Got rid of Vegas in 5 also, and now the Chicago Blackhawks somehow made the conference finals. I have no idea how, especially in year number 1. I don't know how Chicago took us to 7, but luckily in Game 7, we dominated them 10-3. And in the Stanley Cup Finals, we are going to be facing the Boston Bruins, who we did steal their goalie in Jeremy Swayman. I believe Skinner went there also, so maybe Skinner might start a game or 2. Probably not. It's probably going to be Linus Ullmark regardless. Can we go on in the very first season and take home the Stanley Cup? And in season number 1, the Edmonton Oilers will get the job done as we defeat Boston in, I believe, 6 games in the Stanley Cup Finals. Bit of a back and forth final series, but luckily we did come out on top. And now every single Canadian Cup winner has won it on the road. Nobody got it done on home ice, which is kind of a little bit upsetting, honestly. But I mean, we know the Oilers have a good roster. They're in the finals for a reason in real life. McDavid, Draisaitl, 2 top 5 players, and the best player in the world. As of course, McDavid will take home the Conn Smythe, 11 goals and 50 points. Literally maybe the best playoff run of all time. And I mean, it's very fitting for the most talented hockey player we have literally ever seen. As there it is, the Stanley Cup being raised in Boston, but not for the Bruins, instead for the Edmonton Oilers. First time back in the final since 2006. And Connor McDavid gets to raise the Stanley Cup for the first time in his NHL career, as GM Pasta has got the job done with the Oilers in year number 1. Now, obviously, in the playoffs, McDavid was our best player, 11 goals, 50 points. Nugent Hopkins had 30 and 13 goals. Draisaitl had 26. Hyman, 26 as well. And if we take a look at Swayman, he rocked only a .902 save percentage, so he honestly wasn't great. Connor McDavid will take home the Ted Lindsay, Art Ross Hart Trophy, the Maurice Richard to Matthews, the Norris to Quinn Hughes, the Conn Smythe as well to McDavid. Bob is going to win the Vezina on the Buffalo Sabres, as the Selke will go to Ryan O'Reilly. And that is going to do it for this video. We have gone ahead and basically rebuilt every single Canadian team. Had 3 years to win the MA Stanley Cup, and I did it more than half of the teams I've won a Stanley Cup with. Obviously, Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, and then Edmonton. So 4 out of the 7 teams, GM Pasta got the job done. Can you beat my record? Try this challenge. 3 years for every Canadian team. I got it done. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you leave some support on it. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, don't be silly. Wrap your willy.